Hello and welcome to IAMC Radio and Podcast.
Today we're going to explore the top news headlines for May 3rd.
We've got quite a few significant stories from Nigeria and internationally.
And we'll aim to unpack them, always focusing on, truth and justice and how we report.
Absolutely. Looking at Nigeria first, security seems to be a recurring theme, unfortunately.
Yes, several reports touch on security and governance issues.
Let's start up north. In Zamfara State, there's been an attack on a military outpost.
That's right, in Jonabi. It happened very early Saturday morning, around 3 a.m.
John Joby. That name rings a bell. What's that?
Exactly, where those 279 schoolgirls were abducted back in February 2021. So clearly a troubled area.
And the outpost itself.
The reports say it was burnt down, and there's an account from a soldier involved.
Oh. What did the soldier say?
Well, blaming poor firepower, inadequate equipment, really raises questions about readiness.
That's concerning. Any casualties mentioned?
One soldier was injured, thankfully not fatally it seems, and was taken to hospital.
Okay. Now let's shift focus a bit geographically to Edo State. Cult clashes.
Yes, renewed clashes there. It's been happening over the past couple of weeks, apparently.
And lives have been lost.
Sadly, yes. Several lives, according to the reports.
What's the police response been like?
Quite active, it seems. They've arrested 95 suspects.
95? That's a large number.
It is, and 64 of those have already been charged and remanded, so they're taking it seriously.
Any specifics on the groups involved or items recovered?
Yeah, they recovered some locally made pistols, a shotgun, cartridges, and the groups mentioned are the Mafat I and Icon fraternities.
Right. Familiar names in that context, unfortunately.
And the police commissioner made an appeal to parents and guardians, which kind of highlights the community aspect of this problem.
Still in Edo, but a different kind of issue, an activist arrested.
Yes. Comrade Kola Edekpai and 5 others, arrested in Benin City by the DSS.
Why were they arrested?
It was apparently over a planned rally.
A rally for what?
In support of Ibrahim Traoré, the leader in Burkina Faso. And it was framed as part of a wider mobilization against French neocolonial influence.
Interesting. So, what happened? Did the rally go ahead?
No. The police apparently asked them to call it off first. The source suggests they agreed, but then the DSS reportedly raided where they were anyway.
So an arrest despite calling it off.
That's the claim. 4 of the 6 were later released, though.
And there's been reaction to this.
Yes. The Take It Back movement condemned it strongly, called it political repression, a violation of constitutional rights.
Which rights specifically?
They cited sections 38, 39, and 40, freedom of thought, expression, and association.
And there was online support too.
Yeah, a Pan-African activist put out a statement backing Edekpai and, Pan-Africanism in general.
Okay, let's move from activism to social media influence of banking. An influencer called Very Dark Man arrested in Abuja.
Yes, that's a report. And the arrest was apparently ordered by GT Bank.
A bank ordering an arrest? What's the story there?
It seems to stem from complaints Very Dark Man made about his mother's GT Bank account. He alleged unauthorized debits.
Unauthorized debits?
Like what? His lawyer mentions suspicious, repeated debits presented as loan repayments, things they disputed.
And Very Dark Man had spoken about this publicly.
Yes, he posted on social media about visiting the bank, the history of these debits.
Yeah.
He made it quite public.
And is this kind of complaint isolated?
Well, the report mentions another incident back in April. A man named Ario Ahmed Adewale protested at a GT Bank branch over unauthorized transactions linked to Jumia.
Jumia. Did he use Jumia?
He claimed he never had. And the amount involved was apparently over $2 million, so it does raise questions about transaction security or disputes.
Right. Definitely something to watch. Now, a major story concerning Nigeria's refineries. Big arrests made by the EFCC.
Yes, this is significant. Former managing directors and senior officials from the Port Harcourt, Warri, and even Kaduna refineries have been arrested.
What are the allegations?
It's about alleged mismanagement of a huge sum, nearly $3 billion, specifically $2.96 billion.
Wow. And this money was for what?
Meant for refinery rehabilitation, to get them working properly again.
But they haven't been working properly, have they?
That's the crux of it. So her reporters had stories back in December about Warri and Port Harcourt underperforming despite supposedly being recommissioned.
What kind of underperformance?
Well, Warri was reportedly only producing diesel, AJO, and kerosene, DPK, no petrol, and at Port Harcourt, key units weren't functional.
And how much money went to each? Do we know?
Yes, the figures reported are substantial. $1.56 billion for Port Harcourt, $740.7 million for Kaduna, and $657 million for Warri.
Huge amounts. And there are reports of money being traced.
PUNCH reported something like N80 billion traced to Asak Dundee's personal accounts. That's part of the EFCC probe, it seems.
Is this linked to the wider NNPCL probe?
It appears so. The former GCEO, Mela Kiari, and 13 other former executives are also under investigation. The EFCC requested financial records from NNPCL.
So despite the supposed restarts, the refineries are still struggling.
Yes, reports indicate continued shutdowns and underperformance. Warri had a critical fault in its main heater back in January.
And Port Harcourt.
Operating well below capacity, apparently below 40% since last November.
It really paints a picture. Didn't the regulator say something about Warri?
Yes, the NMDPRA disclosed that the nearly $900 million revamp at Warri yielded no petrol, no PMS.
So where does this leave fuel supply? What are marketers saying?
Well, groups like IPMN and Petron are calling for transparency, a proper probe. The IPMN chair in Delta State lamented getting no fuel from the Warri refinery. It hits them directly.
A really serious situation for the country's energy sector. Okay, let's shift gears now to some international headlines. A very disturbing story out of Spain.
Yes, quite shocking. 3 siblings, twins aged 8 and a 10-year-old were rescued.
Rescued from what?
From their parents, allegedly. They had apparently been kept in strict indoor isolation for over 3 years.
3 years. Indoors?
Since 2021, the reports say, only allowed outside occasionally, and even then wearing masks apparently. Strict confinement.
Goodness. How were the children found? How are they?
An investigator noted their reaction to just seeing the outside world: grass, snails, things they seemed unfamiliar with. Physically, their condition was poor, and they were socially isolated, though thankfully not malnourished.
And the parents?
They've been arrested, charged with child abandonment and domestic abuse.
Any reason given for this extreme isolation?
Investigators apparently suggested something like COVID syndrome as a possible factor, maybe an extreme fear related to the pandemic, but obviously that doesn't excuse the alleged abuse.
Truly heartbreaking. Now over to the UK. A judge jailed.
Yes, a serving UN judge, Lydia Mugambe, who is also a Ugandan judge, sentenced to 6 years in prison.
For what crime?
Modern slavery. The conviction was for forcing a young woman to work as her maid without pay.
Without pay. And she's a judge.
Exactly. There were also charges of witness intimidation and immigration offenses related to bringing the victim into the UK for exploitation.
That's quite something. What did the court say about the victim?
That she lived in almost constant fear, partly because of Mugambe's powerful position back in Uganda.
Did the sentencing judge acknowledge her position?
Yes, acknowledged her legal career, but strongly condemned the crimes, stressing the severity of exploiting someone in that way.
A stark reminder. Okay, let's cross the Atlantic to North America. Canada and the U.S. sounds like tensions might be rising.
Well, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, after securing a 4th mandate for his Liberal Party, has pledged a significant economic overhaul.
Aimed at?
Specifically countering U.S. President Donald Trump's policies and safeguarding Canada's national interests. He's talking about a shift.
A shift away from the U.S. economically.
It sounds like it. He said the era of deepening economic integration is over. The focus now is on future cooperation, but maybe on different terms. He explicitly said Canadians elected him to stand up to President Trump.
Strong words. Any immediate actions planned?
Yes, maintaining counter-tariffs against the U.S., eliminating internal Canadian trade barriers by July 1st, and strengthening ties with other international partners.
He seems quite determined. He has the political backing.
The Liberals are near a majority, so he has a strong position. He's planning a trip to Washington soon to meet Trump on trade and security.
But he's managing expectations.
Yes, warned there'd be no white smoke after the first meeting. It suggests tough negotiations ahead.
Interesting timing with the new cabinet and parliament reconvening, and King Charles is involved.
Yes, King Charles III will deliver the opening address for the new parliament session. Carney called it a historic honor, demonstrating Canada's sovereignty.
A symbolic gesture, perhaps, given Trump's past remarks.
Quite possibly. Some might see it as a subtle pushback against Trump's comment about Canada becoming the 51st state.
Right. And finally, speaking of President Trump, a rather unusual social media post.
Yes. He posted an AI-generated image of himself dressed as the Pope on his platform, Truth Social.
Dressed as the Pope. Seriously.
In full papal regalia, apparently. And the image was reportedly reposted later by the official White House X account.
Any context for this?
While he had previously joked about wanting to be Pope after Pope Francis passed away, he did attend the funeral.
Still, posting an image like that? Especially from an official account.
It certainly generated discussion, about the boundaries between personal posts, official communication, and perhaps just drooling.
Indeed. So as we wrap up our exploration of today's top headlines for May 3rd, quite a range.
Definitely. From serious security issues and alleged corruption in Nigeria,
to disturbing cases of isolation and exploitation internationally, and major political shifts between neighbors.
it covers a lot of ground. And through it all, we try to stick to the facts and present things fairly.
That's our commitment, standing for truth and justice and bringing you these stories. It's a complex world out there.
It really is. These headlines just offer glimpses, but hopefully informative ones.
Thank you for listening to the Today's Top News Headlines on IAMC Radio and Podcast.